joining us for another episode of Let's Talk Procurement. So I'm in the studio here with Luke 10. How are you doing today, Luke 10?
Good, I'm good. My brain's a bit fried. We've been talking about AI for a bit. This episode just coming out. We recorded this after the episode.
Yeah, the pre-ramble before the actual episode airs. I think we didn't want to waste our guest's time. He's an absolute incredible guest. He's been an absolute honour to work with as well. I think we've learned quite a lot, and we hope you'll learn something from this episode.
Yeah, so stay tuned and listen to the episode for a couple of the basics of AI and some AI jokes which went down extremely well. I think you'd agree. Our guest, the doctor, was just so overcome with laughter. It doesn't necessarily sound like that on the audio, but you're just going to have to trust me. And we also talk a bit about AI in procurement.
I'm gutted. I didn't do my doctor joke.
Not really your joke if you have to do it.
Oh, this is the one I had. Sorry, I had to search my brain. Doctor, I'm addicted to brake fluid. Nonsense, man. You can stop anytime.
And with that, let's cut to the past. You enjoy.
I'm pleased to introduce today's guest, Dr. Julian Wang. Hello, Julian. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How about yourselves?
Yeah, not too bad. Looking forward to the festive break, even though we probably would have had it by the time the episode airs. Some much needed downtime, I think, is probably needed for us all.
Absolutely.
I think when this goes out, it will probably be going towards Easter sort of time. So happy Easter. It was weird saying that in December. But yeah, we've got a really, really great guest on today. Someone who's majorly, infinitely times more knowledgeable than us about AI. So we thought that it would be great to get you on and kind of...
No, I'm blown away, right? So I think for us to get someone of Julian's stature on our podcast, I think is fantastic. During the early days, I think you've got an extensive background in artificial intelligence and something that I think it could be really beneficial for both ourselves and probably anyone listening. It's often seen as quite a scary topic, I think, and hopefully you can help us dispel some of those myths, or you can make them worse and we'll all hate AI by the end of this. So to kind of ease you in, Julian, we've got some quick fire questions, as we like to call them. It's a real mixed bunch and there's no right or wrong answer, so I'll let Luke 10 go for it and just let's see what you can do.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, I mean that's one hell of an intro, so I'll try and live up to the hype.
Yeah. These quick fire questions are sort of just as if we were kind of chatting down the pub or something. So just whatever comes to your head first, just kind of throw out your answer. I guess the first one is quite simple. Just introduce yourself, name, occupation, experience, just general background type of thing, if you could.
Yeah, of course. So hi, I'm Julian. I'm a data scientist. I mean, in terms of my background, mostly been working within the financial services sector. So working on things like fraud detection. I come from academic background, mostly focusing around bioinformatics and genomics. So lots of data, albeit in a different field.
How did you get into data science? Did you fall into it? Was it something you've always had an interest in?
I would like to say it was planned, but no, I think I very much fell into it. I think I've always had an interest in data analyses, those types of things. I think back in the day, I was very taken with things like fitness tracking. I don't know if either of you are familiar with the earlier versions of Strava or earlier alternatives of Strava, like Endomondo, those types of tools. I remember being fascinated by, what are my trends like? How much am I getting fitter, or the inverse of that, as the case may be, quite often. But yeah, so I think along the way, I think it was just a realization that could be more than just a hobby. And I was quite fortunate, I guess, in terms of when that realization came about, and the market and the developments within that market that enabled me to actually pursue this as a job, as a career.
So another question: Star Wars or Star Trek?
Has to be Star Trek, I would say. I mean, there's a lot more science in there. Not to have a bunch of trolls coming at me, but I feel as if one is made for adults, one is made for kids.
Okay. Maybe I need to grow up then. I'm still stuck in my lightsaber days.
Sweet or savoury?
Savoury, I'd say.
And kind of linked to that, if you could only have one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be? So breakfast, lunch, dinner, same meal.
I'm actually not that fussed about food-related items. I could happily eat the same thing day in, day out. Just not very picky at all.
Anything,
just
anything goes really. Yeah.
Pie and chips, breakfast, lunch, dinner, sorted.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So this is when they start to get a bit stranger. Would you rather have robotic arms or robotic legs?
Ooh, I would say probably legs. I feel as if though that they would be more useful, assuming they work, perfectly.
Yeah, they do work.
As I would imagine they would in a sci-fi scenario.
Would you rather have £1 million up front or a chance at 10 million if you can beat a giraffe in a fight?
Oh, I take the million. I don't think the chances of winning against a giraffe are that high.
So he's done the numbers there. I like that. He's just done the odds in his head. That's what we like.
Okay. And what does procurement mean to you?
Well, so I'll be honest. I don't really know anything about procurement. In my head, and this may be very simplistic, but I'm assuming it's something to do with buying, sourcing.
Yeah, that's fair shot. I think it's interesting. So one of the whole reasons behind our podcast is trying to make procurement a bit more of a light-hearted subject. I think it's one of those you're either heavily involved in and you kind of know it inside and out, or you don't know much about it at all. And you, like you say, you kind of go, well, it's buying, or it's, and actually, as we've moved away from procurement, probably 40 years ago, 50 years ago, was very much I'm buying widgets. How many widgets can I buy for the factory? And then I'll buy more when the stock's low. It's kind of transitioned from that to full life cycle, full end-to-end service management and things like software. So I know we're probably going to mention it soon now, so I might as well get it over and done with. But ChatGPT as an example, if we want to use it as a business, there's going to be a whole series of ramifications for the data. Where's it going? The information we're inputting, all of this stuff that we have to consider to try and protect our businesses. So it's kind of grown. It's grown on arms and legs. It's become a lot more contractual, a lot more commercial, pricing negotiations, making sure that we are doing the right thing ethically and morally as well. So yeah, it's very much, it's stemmed from buying, and it's kind of the polar opposite to a salesman, I would say. If salesmen were allowed to sell to everyone, it would be a dangerous world. So you have to get the procurement folk in to just kind of level the field.
A buysman, as it were.
That's it.
And with that in mind, what animal do you think would be best in procurement?
Wow. Okay.
Tough question.
Yeah.
So our previous guest said elephant.
Okay. Interesting.
I think the rationale was that you would have missed them in the room, and they could really make themselves known.
That's quite a good response. I was thinking snake, but not because of the negative connotations, purely because they can they can take a lot, right? They can eat things that are much larger than their own body size.
Yeah.
Thinking from a how much can you procure perspective.
Yeah. You've dug yourself out of a hole there. I was really thinking. We've built him up to be the best guest ever, and he's just called us snakes. 5 minutes in with snakes. No, but I actually like the analogy there, and I think snakes are also known for being versatile. And aside from the backstabbing connotations they usually have, there are actually some strong advantages. So yeah, I like that. see if we get any other guests calling us snakes.
That's brilliant. Thanks for that answer to that. So that was the end of the quickfire questions.
Yeah.
So now we'll do our smooth transition again to.
We'll dive into the world of artificial intelligence, I think.
Cool. So, kind of wanted to split this up in terms of, at first talking about the basics of AI to kind of give it a bit of background and detail. We have sort of a character that we've sort of made called Everyday Dave, and we have a couple of episodes where we try to explain procurement to an everyday Dave type of person. So potentially, our listeners are probably quite stupid.
No. So the concept behind Everyday Dave, right? We're all everyday Daves in some scenarios. So when we ask you, what do you think procurement is? You probably felt a bit of Everyday Dave because it's not your subject, right? So
absolutely, yeah.
we like to chat with our subject experts or people from different fields and kind of get them to explain what their area is to an everyday Dave. So I guess in this situation, we're your everyday Daves. So I guess it'd be really good to kind of just dive into what artificial intelligence is and kind of how can you summarize it to a listener that has never heard of it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, happy to. So, I mean, it's a very broad field. Simplistically, you could define it as anything that typically requires human level intelligence or intellect. Obviously, with the recent hype around ChatGPT and large language models, that's what everyone thinks of as AI. But really, the field encompasses things like rules-based engines, and more traditional machine learning type models as well. So that covers things like spam filters, fraud detection algorithms that your banks use. All of those kind of fall under the wider umbrella of artificial intelligence.
Brilliant. And when you said search refinement, is that things like Google and Bing? Do they run off? Bing doesn't even run anymore, does it? Bing still around?
It's still around, yeah. It's still a thing. It's actually gained some market share recently with a partnership with OpenAI. Actually, yeah.
Oh right. Oh nice. So do they utilize artificial intelligence then? Or is it more?
Yeah. So a lot of them do now. So a lot of them have incorporated generative AI components into the search. So you'll start to notice if you ask a question within search, instead of just showing you the top most relevant websites, it's starting to just give you the answers directly now.
Yeah.
So a lot of those, especially on Bing, are powered by OpenAI or ChatGPT or GPT 3.5 or 4, which is the underlying models that make ChatGPT work.
Brilliant. I guess who owns ChatGPT or not just ChatGPT, but AI in general? Is it typically open source and available for people, or is it? There's just so many variations. It's kind of mix and match.
Yeah, I mean there are quite a few players. So OpenAI, obviously being the most famous one, they have a very strange. They have a very unusual org structure. So I don't know if either of you have followed all of the saga with Sam Altman being fired and then rehired and then
but it sounds like something
all that within a day or two. All of that was as a result of the unique sort of non-profit, sort of for-profit structure. But no, in terms of who are there, yes, OpenAI, but there are quite a few open source large language models out there as well. You also have the likes of Llama 2 from Meta, which is another really popular model that's available as well.
So, and forgive me for this because this is a really daft question, but when Facebook changed to Metaverse, my brain immediately went to the films that have recently come out where you're living in a room and you're working and your whole life is actually tapped into the metaverse as opposed to coming into the office like I've done today, and your currency becomes credits, and you're kind of more focused on your virtual world. Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, and I know that's probably a misconception, but it still makes you wonder: am I like the masses and kind of just missing the mark completely with that?
Well, I mean, given their track record, it's probably not far off. Yeah, so I think their reasoning for changing their name to Meta was that they saw their company as more than just Facebook.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's actually the case remains to be seen. But the idea of the metaverse is quite an interesting one, and how it ties into AI is quite interesting as well. I think what you were touching upon there in terms of could we have this meeting in the metaverse? I think that's the path they're wanting to go down. There are some interactions that are arguably better in a VR environment or in an augmented reality environment. There's a difference. You get a different presence in VR as compared to just having a 2D image on a Teams call or on a Zoom call. Arguably, it's more immersive and a better substitute for having a call.
Yeah, so a substitution as opposed to a complete replacement of in-person, face-to-face meetings and things.
One thing that's kind of interesting to me, or that I would kind of like to know, is from an everyday Dave perspective, what are the kind of uses? So how could I use AI in the day-to-day world, I suppose, as it is at the moment?
Or should you use it?
Should I use it? Yeah.
Well, I mean, from an everyday perspective, I would say you're probably already using a lot of it. So if you've used, and apologies to anyone who has any of the smart devices nearby, but if you're using Alexa, or if you're using Google Home Minis or Siri or any of those things, they're running AI models in the background to understand what you're saying. We touched upon fraud earlier. That's already a key component of your banking systems, credit ratings, mortgage applications. A whole bunch of those processes already incorporate large amounts of AI.
Do you have an opinion on open banking? I know that's probably a little tangent, but I was recently looking at an app that kind of claims to be a one-stop shop for your banks, and it's it does the budgeting and everything. But to me, that kind of seems a bit too much. Like the stuff they would be accessing would be kind of your whole life, your savings account, your spending account, your miscellaneous fund that you hide from the wife to buy her presents with, that sort of thing.
I mean, I think the idea behind it isn't so much that there's one place for all of the companies to see your data. I think the idea behind it is that there will be a platform for on which you can share all of that information, so that your data isn't just siloed between, say, Bank A and Bank B. The control over who sees what and how much do they see, that is still very much in your control. But what it will allow is arguably more innovation in that space. Because if you can see what's happening on an individual level, if you can see what's happening across all of your accounts, all of your loans, mortgages, etc., potentially you could have better budgeting systems or forecasting systems or any of those types of things.
Okay.
It also just simplifies the whole process, right? So instead of say checking 4 or 5 different apps, you can just check one.
No, brilliant. That's actually helped me out, because I think I'll give that app a go then, because I've been a bit stubborn and I've been switching between 4 or 5 different apps lately.
Bit of free advice there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, because it's us and because it's this podcast, we have to throw in some jokes. So I've looked at a few computer sciencey jokes, and I'm wondering if you can give them like a rating, say out of 10 or something. So I'm going to read off a couple, right? Why did the robot go on a diet? It had too many bites.
Wow.
What's your thoughts on that one? Out of 10?
I would congratulate you on recently becoming a dad, Luke.
Brilliant dad joke. Love it.
Why did the computer scientist get stuck in the shower? He was washing his hair, and the instructions on the shampoo bottle said, lather, rinse, repeat.
No, God, please, no, no.
I actually quite like that one, yes.
Okay, next one is, why are AI so good at dancing? Because they have algorithm.
Stop.
Luke One's just put his head in his
I'm
hands.
sorry about this, Julian.
Why did the AI break up with the computer? Because it found something biter. Not sure about that one. Didn't get it.
That's quite an impressive list of jokes there.
I think that's Julian saying stop.
I've got one more. I've got one more. This is the last one.
It's torture.
When a computer scientist sees a door with a sign pull, he pushes first just to make sure that the exceptions are handled properly.
I do quite like that one, actually, yeah. I've got one for you, actually.
Okay.
What do you call a singing computer? A Dell.
Yes.
Yes, I like that.
I like that.
That's good. Cool.
So that was no preparation.
Yeah. So maybe we should move on now to AI myths. So what do you think is the most common myth that people kind of have about AI that's just not true, that you kind of want to set this record straight on?
So, I mean, this might not necessarily be entirely a myth, but there's a common narrative that AI is going to replace your job. AI is going to replace you in your job. And I feel as if with a lot of these types of technological changes, I think it's more likely that AI is not going to take your job, but it will be the case that someone using AI is going to take your job. So I think for all of us, especially in the fields that we're in, I think it's important to have an idea of what's happening in terms of the developments in that space, and just keep up to date.
So actually not being afraid of it, but being more open to it and kind of adaptive, use it, or kind of maybe fall victim to someone else using it.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is I see people using those language softwares to pump out responses to kind of interview questions or to important emails and things like that. Is there ever a possibility that I respond to an interview question using ChatGPT and it gives me a lovely response, but then Luke 10's applied for the same job, done the same thing, and his response is 95% similar?
Yes, potentially, yes. That's not going to be that's never going to be a 0% chance of that happening. But I would argue that that's kind of focusing on the wrong part, right? So if you're relying on AI to ace the interview, arguably, what's going to happen once you do get the job?
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I guess another myth that I've seen some people is that AI and Terminator, and that AI is going to take over the world. And I think there's a lot of people who are, as you said earlier, is kind of scared to use AI. So what do you think are kind of the biggest benefits of AI that you can foresee coming up in the future?
I think so there's two fields that I think would hugely benefit from AI. One is around education, and one is around healthcare. So I think in the school systems, the way that everything is taught, that's largely remained unchanged for centuries, maybe millennia. But I think having the ability to highly personalize educational material to the child can only be a good thing. And for a similar reason in healthcare, the ability to have personalized medicine, I think, is going to be a real game changer when that becomes more commonplace.
Brilliant. And do you think that, I keep seeing this, I've heard it on a number of other podcasts, where there's going to be the point that an AI or machine learning will effectively be smarter than the human brain could ever comprehend? So that as a human, we've obviously got a limited capacity to absorb information, process information. And I've seen one podcast saying that we've actually already reached that point, and AI probably is already doing things that the human brain can't comprehend. And others saying that we're kind of closing in on that, but it's still a number of years away. Is that true? Do you think we'll get to that state where it's smarter, or
so
I guess almost thinking in the same
a
way that the human brain does?
Yeah, so no, it's a really interesting question. Certainly for individual tasks, that's for individual tasks, AI, machine learning, that's already operating at superhuman speeds or capabilities. So you have things around language understanding, transcription, those types of tasks. That's already been achieved. I think the main worry is around artificial general intelligence, right? So can you replace the general abilities of a regular person through AI? I guess that's a much more complex topic area, and it kind of ties into AI alignment, right? So how can you make sure that the incentives that the AI models have match with what you as an individual, or you as a country, or as humanity are as well. So very, very complex questions with very complex answers, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, of course, I understand that. It's a massive subject, isn't it? And it's that, is there a point where AI then outsmarts you and you can't turn it off anymore? You can't shut it down, and you can't. It's making 4D moves, as they say, 4D chess moves. They're 3 steps ahead and kind of going in that direction.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. It's a fascinating topic area, but I mean, I don't really feel clued up enough in that area to make a sensible comment, I'm afraid.
That's fair enough. And I think the other thing that's kind of fascinated me is the challenge of doctors' handwriting. So obviously that's kind of the myth in the world that it's really hard to read doctors' handwriting. Well, it's not a myth, it's true. Trying to read doctors' handwriting, it's a nightmare. Mm-hmm. Do you think there'll ever be machine learning scripts because I know there is, that can kind of take a paper document with handwriting and they can kind of transcribe it into a PDF or churn it into a document, or they can pull out extract sort of certain key bits of keywords perhaps. I feel like the kind of utopia would be to read doctors' handwriting and perhaps pull out medication or pull out a diagnosis or something like that.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, so optical character recognition models have been around for a long time, and they've definitely seen quite a lot of improvement in the last few years. But I would almost argue that is the wrong solution for a very simple problem, which is maybe just don't rely on handwriting in the first place. With all the technology that's available, maybe have that as an API service, or even as a voice dictation service, run it through different types of models that are perhaps easier to get the data from.
So that's something I never thought we'd do on this podcast. I think we've just solved a centuries-old problem that we've had here in the UK and probably elsewhere in the world with doctors' handwriting. But that right there is the solution. And I'm sorry, Luke, I know you've had some questions. I'm kind of going sideways a little bit, but it's blowing my mind a little. If you could use AI to make the world a fairer place, so I'm thinking, give people who maybe come from underprivileged backgrounds a better chance in life, or to make poverty, kind of the poverty barrier reduce, or third world, less of a third world country, and kind of bring them forward and improve that sort of balance, what would you do? I know that's a
very broad question.
yeah, but do you think that you could use AI to kind of support that? I know you said medical and education tools, but I always feel perhaps some of the barriers that we always face are that you and I have access to a mobile phone, to a laptop, to whatever kind of resources we need, and perhaps other people aren't as privileged as such.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a way that we could utilize AI to perhaps improve that?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely areas in which AI can have quite a significant impact, but I would make the argument that maybe this is not the best solution for AI, or maybe the best solution is not to use AI, right? Because this very much feels as if you're trying to solve governance issues, human problems, with technology. And some of these problems are not inherently technological in nature. So to try and force technology as the solution might not be the best path to go down.
I think if you gave world leaders the technology, they'd all have different uses and interests, wouldn't they? So I think that's probably part of the problem. So I appreciate that.
And we should probably, being how far we're into the podcast, talk a little bit about procurement and how AI can be used in procurement. So a couple of things that I have seen in terms of thoughts about how people think AI can be used seems to be basically around three main areas. So like automation of processes seems to be the first one, identification of new suppliers, and then decision making. I mean, feel free to pick up on any of those three, but I wanted to start on decision making and sort of link it in with the risk of AI. So is it true that there are some kind of limitations in the decision making, kind of some AI isn't unbiased, I suppose?
Well, so that's a very interesting topic around bias, because it very much depends on how those systems were trained, what data sources were used, how was it fine-tuned for the specific task, and also going back to what you were just talking about there, Luke 1 or Luke 10. I'm not sure which one you are. Luke 1. It may be the case of trying to use technology in a place where technology is not the solution. It is an interesting topic. So in my view, there are a couple of areas that I think AI will be quite useful. So maybe not so much around the decision-making process, but definitely supporting the decision-making process. So that could be document scanning, document summarization. To your point around searching for available solutions, that could be quite good use, right? So to have some sort of a system to constantly scrape to see what new technologies are there, and then to summarize and provide those as options during your procurement stage. I guess another common use case would be in document or text generation, not as the final draft, but definitely in terms of having a first draft of responses for your RFIs, RFPs, those types of activities. They're quite good for building out that sort of framework in terms of what you want your response to be.
The generating templates or sort of,
absolutely.
Responses. I think the challenge I have is, let's say we're looking at a new supplier to sell us laptops, right? We'll have five laptop providers, 5 vendors, and they'll all be subject to a number of criteria. So what's their delivery time, their price, have they got a good reputation, are they trustworthy? And once we've got all that information back, it's about scoring those suppliers.
Mm-hmm.
And the difficult bit from a human perspective is that we always tend to put in our own biases, whether we know we're doing it or not. It's very much easy for us to favour, a HP laptop because we worked on a HP before, or an iPhone because we've always been on iPhones. And trying to eliminate that from the scoring process, I think, would be massive for procurement. And I guess where I'm going with that is AI doing some of that scoring could probably be really beneficial if we're comfortable it doesn't have that bias as well.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I think I think it'd be hard to say that it would never have any bias at all, but it would at least. You can make the argument that at least it would be the same bias in your particular example applied across the board. But I mean, speaking purely selfishly, with laptops, I would prefer if the company just moved to a, hey, you have a budget of X, go buy what you want.
Yeah, I think that would roll it harder to keep everyone secure and
I'm sure, yes, yeah.
without updates and things like that. But I'm sure you'd procure yourself a nice little Wonder laptop, or build yourself something, which I know is something I like to do as well. Did you have any other questions lined up?
Nothing unless you wanted to bring up other stuff.
You mentioned when we spoke the other day, Julian, about 3 different types of machine learning of AI. Is that right?
So I think we touched upon supervised machine learning, unsupervised machine learning, right, as the sort of more traditional examples of ML. And then we briefly talked around large language models, which are all of the rage these days.
Brilliant. Yeah, so I don't know if I was going crazy, but that's kind of where we're going with it, isn't it? It's not just AI. There's 3 levels to it, and you break it down further, and they get more complicated and kind of run off more different data sets and things like that.
Yeah. So I mean, this goes back to our starting point, which is AI is a very, very broad field, right? So when you talk about AI to people, I think most people just only think of ChatGPT, but there are and robots, yes. But there are many other areas as well.
What would be the most surprising area that you think that an everyday Dave wouldn't be aware is AI?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess it would have to be, and I'm not sure if I can think of an example, but I guess it would have to be those systems that are already in place, but are just running in the background. So things that determine your credit scores, for example, or things that determine your credit worthiness, those types of systems that you don't really have much visibility over. Yeah.
I think, does that include, because I know we start seeing all the supermarkets now offering you like 900% discount if you've got a card with them, and they track obviously what you purchase, and then the next time you purchase something you might get a little voucher through for 10p off your favourite toilet roll or whatever it is. Is that running off similar analytics and kind of your behavioural patterns?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, it's a gold mine in terms of potential data. Arguably, though, the discounts that they give you, there's a couple of different incentives from the company's perspective, right? So arguably they wouldn't actually want to give you discounts on things that you would buy anyway, because that's not in their best it's not in their interest. But by collating all of that data, by going through and seeing what's popular, what your trends are, what people that are similar to you also like, and maybe they can incentivize you to try something that you wouldn't have otherwise bought. So there's quite a few different uses with those types of transactional data.
Do you think people are missold when they sign up for one of these cards, in that they go, well, I'll get my lunchtime meal deal for £1 cheaper if I get this card, so I might as well, and they're not kind of conscious of what they're actually exchanging for it? I
mean, I don't think it's necessarily being missold, but I think there is, in the same way that I don't think any of us really reads terms and conditions, or which cookies we accept, or any of those types of things. I don't think there's much thought that's put in when we do sign up to these kinds of things. But again, I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just we have to be aware of what decisions we make off the back of those discounts or recommendations or suggestions.
No, I think you're right. And from a procurement perspective, we're always looking at the terms and conditions. So even when we get a mobile phone contract through, we're kind of still guilty of reading that 200-page document. But you're right. I know, my family members they will sign up for a discount card, and they won't think twice about the T's and C's that sit behind it and maybe where their data is going. And actually, like you say, data is a very expensive and lucrative field for a lot of people, isn't it? Because it will generate more business.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think Luke 10 has one more question before we wrap up.
I guess just as like a final, potentially a nice way to end it. If there are any people, say procurement directors, who have the ability to sort of influence how AI is used in procurement in their company, what advice would you give them, or where would you steer them to kind of start off the research?
So, I mean, that's a good question. So I would say for most organizations that are large enough to require dedicated procurement teams, chances are they also have dedicated analytics teams and data experts within their company. So I would say reach out to those people, to those analytics practices that they may have, to any sort of centers of excellences that they might have. That would definitely be a good first port of call.
Stakeholder management, right there.
Yeah, you've got it. You should come work in procurement. You might half your salary, but
triple the workload as well.
Yeah, no, appreciate you taking your time to answer all of our weird questions, and you stuck around even with our bad jokes, so appreciate that. But,
honestly.
Have you got any recommendations where you want to point people, or shout outs to give, or anything?
Any closing remarks?
I mean, I guess the main one is to just keep up to date, right? It's a very exciting field. It's a rapidly developing field. And there was one quote that I saw quite recently that stuck with me, and that was, calculators didn't make mathematics obsolete, right? So in the same way, I don't think AI will make, insert name of job here obsolete either. It's a very interesting field. I think I'll just encourage everyone to have a look around, have a play around with some of the tools that are available.
That's amazing, thank you. And I think that's going to be our description of the episode as well, that quote. That's fantastic. So honestly, it's been a real pleasure, and I hope the listeners have enjoyed it as much as I have, and I'm sure you have as well. Yeah, thank you, Julian. Thank you very much.
See you later.
Thank you, Luke, and thank you, Luke. Yeah, it was great having discussions around AI, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.